Welcome to Beats and Boots, the podcast where stories from music and subcultures around the world come together. Here, we want to explore the journey of skinheads and skin girls, road boys and road girls, punks, and everyone part of our subcultures. On each episode, we will dive deep into personal stories, how our guests discovered these scenes, faced challenges, found joy, unity, and identity through music. Join us on Beats and Boots, music and subculture stories. Welcome to Beats and Boots, music and subculture stories. Today's guest is a true pillar of the punk and oi scene, originally from Canada. A musician who has played in numerous influential bands such as Subway Thought, Emergency, Sydney Ducks, Suede Razors, No Heart, Alternate Action, Ultra Sect, and the Bossers. He is also the founder of Longshot Music, a label that has been shaping the scene since 1994. Let's welcome Mike to Beats and Boots. Mike, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I'm really excited to share your story.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So let's begin with the introduction to the subculture. Let's go back to when you started. Could you describe that when you first discovered the subculture, the scene, when, where, and how you did get involved?
I grew up in a small town in Canada, so there was really no scene at all. So I first sort of discovered punk rock around 13 or 14 from a younger cousin who lived in the bigger city. And he would, when they'd come visit, he'd bring cassette tapes. So that's when I first discovered bands like Misfits, Black Flag, the usual stuff. But then a few years later, when I moved to the big city for university, I was able to go see a lot more punk shows, and I met more people, and I met my first skinhead. And he gave me a tape with all of the classic oi bands, The Business, The Blitz, The Foreskins, Last Resort. It was probably Last Resort that really stood out in my mind. But so that's how I discovered the music that would sort of take me to where I am today. So,
And this is what year you said?
So it was like sort of early to mid 80s that my cousin would bring cassette tapes of, all the usual punk bands. But then in 1988, I moved away for university and would have met Shane probably in 1989. So
you mentioned that there were record like stores where you were, and that's how you found new music.
Yeah, because this is way before the internet. So you found new music because, we would exchange cassette tapes. This was before you could even burn a CD. So it was really just cassette tapes, So that's why I always think it's funny when people talk about making like mixtapes and they're on like the computer. And it's like, no, that's not a mixtape. It's like a mixtape is this little plastic thing. But yeah, and then
I did cassettes too. Like that was the exchange at my time, late 90s.
No, I know. No, but I'm talking now. Now people say a mixtape and it's like a Spotify playlist, and they're calling it a mixtape, and I'm like, wow.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know.
I think so. I'm like gonna sound like the old man that's shaking my fist at the clouds, but there were a couple good record stores as well in Winnipeg, the bigger city where I moved for university. So yeah, I was finding all kinds of good records, like used records, new records. Like when records were coming out brand new, I was getting, all the good Oi records from like the late '80s and stuff. Like, I remember buying The Killing Dream by the Blitz when it was brand new, and we were all like, "What the fuck is this?" But I actually liked it. So yeah, I was buying all those Oi compilations back in the late '80s, brand new as new releases. So,
do you remember a specific show or moment that came out to your memory, like it shocked you and shaped you and said, like, this is where I belong. This is what I want to be part of?
Not really. It's probably a gradual slide into it. Like my first shows were, just the typical Canadian punk shows were bands like DOA, SNFU, Forgotten Rebels. Those are the bands that would tour across Canada all the time. So go see those bands at least twice a year when they'd come through town. And really, there was not a significant Oi show in Winnipeg ever that I remember. It wasn't until I moved to Vancouver that I would see bands like The Business and stuff like that. So, but as far as like, yeah, there wasn't a lightning moment where it was like, aha, I was just kind of liked the music and never really stopped. It just sort of, yeah, it's just always been that way since I was 13 or 14.
Now, I want to be sure that I covered this important question about how you got involved in the bands. You said that you started playing the bass, and then eventually.
Yeah, so sort of to recap that, I had bought a bass guitar when I was like a younger teenager, thinking, what a great instrument. One of my favorite bands was always The Who, and John Entwistle was so cool. But there was no way to play music with in the small town that I lived in, so the bass just collected dust for years. And then this friend Shane that I met, still friends with today, he saw that I had a bass. He's like, "Oh, you play bass guitar?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "Well, we need a bass player, so I'm going to teach you." So yeah, I just showed up to a practice and he showed me how to play bass. And I think it was literally within 2 months we had our first show. So,
oh, wow.
So for everybody out there that wants to play music and has never done it, it's not that hard. I mean, I did it under 2 months. So
really, really cool. And that first band, the name was?
It was as original as it can be. It was The Boys, spelled BOI !S. So yeah, I know there's other bands out there with that name, but we did it first because that was 1989. So
yeah.
But it was before the internet, so it doesn't count.
And after that, you were part of many other projects, right?
Just nothing bands. Like I moved to another smaller city again when I was about 21, and there wasn't really a lot of punk stuff there. So I played in kind of just more like hard rock or grunge bands. Grunge was big back then. It was just something to keep playing music. And then I moved to Vancouver, Canada, which is on the very west coast, and that's when it really took off. And I met some guys there. And Subway Thugs was formed in about 1998, I think. And most people, if they have heard of Subway Thugs, it's probably or possibly because the singer of that band was Greg Huff, who's the singer of Bishop's Green. So, yeah, we did that for 2 or 3 years, and that's when I really started to make connections and meet people and exchange letters, faxes. We actually faxed back then. And we went down and played in Arizona one time at the Southwest Oi Fest, and I got to meet a lot of the guys in the California bands like Bobber Wonderland and some of the Kansas City guys like Main Street Saints and Terminus City. So yeah, the real connection started in the late 90s, and that's when I sort of got the idea to start a label.
Okay. Early 90s.
Label started probably mid 90s, but it really took off in the late 90s when I started to meet more people and make connections.
How has being part of this subculture have influenced your personal self, who you are in terms of, you have met so many people, you have been involved in so many scenes. Any moment of self-reflection where you say, like, this is why I do this?
I mean, there's a lot of moments of self-reflection saying, why do I do this?
Truly, true.
I mean, I just don't know what I would do if I didn't. I don't think it's changed me that much. I think whether I was in the subculture or not, I'd be the same person, if that makes sense. I don't think the music identifies me. It's just part of who I am. It's, for me personally, being a skinhead is not the most important thing. It's part of it. It's, it's obviously a part that I'm passionate about, but for me, who I am is bigger than that. And I think I would be the same way no matter what, whether I was doing this music thing or not. But I enjoy it. I guess that's what matters, Like I have done it for 35, almost 40 years between the label and the bands, and I beat my head against the wall a few times asking why, but I don't see it stopping anytime soon. So it's just probably what I'll do till the day I die.
So you want to walk us through that moment, how the label started and how was that process?
The label started honestly just as a very self-serving act. All I ever wanted to do since I started playing in my very first band was to be on a 7-inch record. So nobody was beating down a path to my door to say, hey, can we put your band out on a record? So I put out a compilation 7-inch that included one of my bands. So that was it. I was like, there you go. I've been on a record. Now I can quit. But of course it didn't happen that way. And I just kept doing it. Yeah. I don't know. The first one was kind of mildly successful. I was lucky enough that at the time I got the Templars to be on it, and that's always a good thing. So that first 7-inch did okay. I sold them and I made another one, and that did okay. So I made another one. So after a little while, after 5 or 6 releases, I thought, oh, this is easy. Being a label is easy. I kind of sort of overstepped and got a little under, I spent a lot of money on a lot of releases that didn't do very well. So it sort of made me step back a little bit and realize I wasn't going to have a career as a label executive. But yeah, it's been a hobby. It's been a hobby now for 30 plus years, and it takes a lot of time, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle, but
Can you share a story of a band or an album that you took chances on and it turned out to be something incredible that you felt really, really well about it?
Sadly, usually when you take a chance, it doesn't turn out incredible. I mean, the obvious one that I can think of in relatively recent history is like the first Bishop's Green album just took off. I mean, I co-released that with Rebellion Records in Europe, and I've been friends with those guys forever, so it just made sense. And as everybody knows, Bishop's Green got really big for a while, and we ended up pressing that first 12-inch probably about at least 4 or 5 times. So yeah, not that I wasn't expecting great things, but it's the first time I worked with a band that did a lot of touring, and that makes the biggest difference for any band out there. If you want to sell a lot of records, you kind of got to play a lot of shows. Like that's the best way to sell records is to be out there and play in front of people, because people at the show will maybe buy a record or buy a record at a later point. Now with social media, they're going to post about it, and they're going to make, Instagram stories or reels or TikTok videos, and people that didn't even go to the show are going to hear about your band. So yeah, it's like exponential. The more shows you play, the more people you reach.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the joy in what you do. What brings you the most joy? Like playing in bands or helping other projects and their bands?
I mean, I'm to this day still a nervous wreck when I play a live show. Like, I like the excitement and the adrenaline of it, but I get nervous and I hate that. So I don't honestly enjoy the actual moment that I'm on stage. I like the whole process of writing music, recording music, hanging out with my friends, traveling. Touring's great, except for that 40 minutes I'm on the stage. But the part I've always liked the most, like in regards to label, selling records sucks. Like, trying to like reach people and like, packing orders. It's not fun. But my vocation is also, I ended up falling into printing. So I worked in print shops. And so I've always liked the putting the record together, like creating the artwork, like doing all that production and the process of making a record is still a thing I like the most.
The creative part.
Yeah, like getting the music from the artist, helping, with maybe suggestions about the best order of the songs, or, getting the artwork and sort of saying, hey, this is great, but it could be better if we do this. And so I like that collaboration and that creation of making the record. Like that's still my favorite thing, whether it's my band or somebody else's band. It's just what I really like the most.
Yeah, sharing that experience with others and the collaboration and the creative part.
Yeah.
So now as an adult, how has your perspective of the scenes had changed through time? When you started in the scene was really different. You have met many people from many places. Have you observed differences, similarities within the subcultures?
I mean, as an adult, am I really an adult? I guess I am because I have responsibilities, but I think maybe, I don't know if it's really answering the question you're asking, but, I don't think being an adult really changes it that much because other than just being older and having more responsibilities, I don't think I've changed that much. But the evolution of the scene, if that's maybe what you're asking or what I'm going to answer, at least, I mean, so many people over the years I've met that are who knows where now. And then the flip side is so many people that I've met like 30 years ago that are still here and still around. Like there's always this kind of like ebb and flow of like people that just come in and out of the scene. And I never really get too uptight about it. Like, yeah, sometimes it rubs me the wrong way, but I feel like at the end of the day, the people that are into it will still be around a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Like, I don't get too worked up about quote unquote fresh cuts. I mean, we need new people. So welcome all, come on in, check it out. And if you're not a dick, hang around. But if, if you're just here as a tourist, then, off you go. So that's kind of the thing. Over the years, just so many people that I've seen come and go, and the internet's just kind of amplified that. So I guess that's the answer I'm trying to get to. So I think the internet has been the best and worst thing to happen to quote unquote the scene. It's like opened the world up, made it easier to communicate and exchange ideas, and get your music out there. Like I never would have gone on a tour in Europe if I didn't have the internet. Like bands were doing it, but I didn't have the access to do it before the internet. And then as soon as I was able to email people and like get a record deal with somebody in Europe and stuff, like, so yeah, the internet's been great for that reason, but it's also just kind of kicked these doors open where the lines got really gray between like, what's this scene versus that scene versus that scene. And it's kind of just one big mix of like a subculture, not subcultures, but there's just a subculture now. Like
it's true. It's right.
Which is
started that way before.
Which is almost the mainstream. Like subculture's almost gone mainstream. Like look at you look at TV shows now or whatever, and it's like everybody's wearing a Fred Perry or Ben Sherman. It's like, Doc Marten boots. Like what was subculture now is mainstream. And again, am I going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just say, I'm not going to wear my clothes anymore because it's not alternative anymore. But so that's, again, I don't know if I answered the question you were asking, but I answered a question.
No, so very well.
In the 30 plus years, that's just kind of like my takeaway is like, it's a very different world as far as being in the subculture.
Good answer. So, and in that line of thinking, like what changes or improvement would you like to see moving forward?
I mean, I often like say I wish the internet wasn't here, but again, that would just shoot myself in the foot because I wouldn't have met you. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this interview. So yeah, it's like I said, I'm not going to throw the baby away with the bathwater. I'm just going to make the best of it. And at the end of the day is just take away what you want from it. Like I bitch in private with friends about things all the time. I try not to air my dirty laundry, and it's just the rantings of an old man, to be honest. But I don't have the power to change anything, so I'm not going to say anything should change. I'm just going to do my best to be part of it. I mean, my biggest change that I've had to make is like getting used to social media, like using Instagram. I mean, I still half the time can't even log into Facebook because I always forget my password or whatever. But yeah, just understanding how to use social media to help push the label and promote the bands on the label and sell records, because that's why you make them, to try to sell them and get them to people. So that's the biggest change I've had to make, is just to understand the evolution.
Now, talking about music, how has your musical taste evolved as you grow older? And if you still connect with music that you hear when you were starting, like from the new music and the old music, how you have changed and how still connected to you?
I mean, I've loved music always. Like, I remember being like a kid, like 4 or 5 years old, like listening to the records my dad had and stuff, like, weird hippie-ish type of shit, like the Mamas and the Papas and John Prine. Like I've always loved music. Like I remember loving the Grease soundtrack, or buying like dollar cassette tapes of like Jan and Dean and the Beach Boys. Like, so, but as I started to get more of a conscious interest in music, still love punk. I don't necessarily like the really hard, fast, thrashy punk that I used to love. I'm a little more like mellow and more into like listening to like mid-tempo, and honestly, I listen to a lot of classic rock now, a lot of British new wave of British heavy metal, like just like that more classic rock. Like when I'm home alone, I don't listen to a ton of punk or oi. Like that's what I do when I'm out going to shows, playing shows, and then when I'm at home, it's like just a little more like mellow and relaxing for the most part, unless I'm going out and want to get energetic. But yeah, I like everything. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in saying you like something. Like,
Oh no, absolutely not.
I don't
Yeah.
know, just yeah, like no. I think having a broad palette of musical taste is a good thing. And
It is.
the one thing that hasn't been touched on yet is obviously the cliche that it is like reggae. I mean, still love reggae. I loved reggae before I knew what skinheads was, because my dad listened to Bob Marley. So from there, I would go down that path and listen to Peter Tosh and Jimmy Cliff. And so, even back as like a 10, 11, 12-year old, listening to like the real mainstream reggae artists. So, yeah. So, really, it hasn't changed a lot. It's just gotten broader as I've gotten older. I've become less closed-minded about, what are you doing? You're not listening to punk rock, poser. Like, I don't do that anymore.
No, great answers, truly. Anything that you want to add that you think is important that people know?
Mm, I'm kind of a bit of a, I don't know if the word shy, but a very understated person. Like I don't often put my face out there, and when I meet people, I don't often lead with, "Hey, I'm Mike Longshot." So,
Do you understand what you have done for the subculture? That do you reflect on that, on your what you have given and what you have done for the community?
I don't have a big ego, so sometimes it kind of like I don't want to think that way, but I guess like 30 years and about 400 releases in some capacity between the label and the bands. Like I understand that there's been an impact, and I meet people that are younger than me that maybe were like, 13 or 14 discovering punk rock, and the records they were buying was like a Longshot music release from the local band in the city they live in. And they're like, "Oh, you were so influential." And I'm just like, "Come on, really?" I guess like, that's the way I would feel if I was to meet like somebody who ran, you know, No Future Records or something. So not that I'm comparing myself to No Future, but I'm just, I guess it's like the
Yeah.
equivalent of like, yeah, I guess the bands I worked with and the records I helped to put out, have influenced people, and that's something I do I appreciate, and I appreciate the people, that it has affected people, and I don't really like to take the credit. I think the bands are the ones that take the credit. It's, like I'm just sort of like a middleman. So.
No, but the work that you do behind scenes is really important too. So
yeah, but there wouldn't be records spit out if there weren't good bands recording good records. So, I still like to understate my role in the whole thing, because I don't like to have a big ego, and I like to try to stay very in the background. So this, even just like this video thing, I was like, does it have to be on video? Can I just like, yeah.
No, truly. Thank you so much for sharing all this really important information, and it's good that you know that you have done a lot for the scene, and it's important.
And to anybody listening that has ever bought a record from Longshot Music, thank you for supporting not the label specifically, but the bands that you've bought the record of. Like I said, I've always tried to put the bands as the focus. Like those are the reasons that I do this, like, to help the bands. So thank you for buying records from Longshot Music, because it helps the bands. So
no, thank you, truly. You need to recognize that what you do is important, and you are that line between them that truly puts together the possibility of sharing the music, and that's really important too.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate hearing from people. So anybody out there that wants to drop a line, like, I'm really bad with Instagram and I'm really bad with Facebook, so be patient, but I do try to answer everybody. But if it takes a while, or if you have to hit me up twice, feel free. It's just it's not that I'm indifferent, I'm just really bad with technology. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mike, very, very much for joining us today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Remember to check out our Spotify playlist featuring Mike's music recommendation. This was Naya Madi. Until the next episode of Beats and Boots. Music and Subculture Stories.